Good morning. How are you doing today? Here we are. We're coming up on Thanksgiving. How are you feeling about that? Well, Thanksgiving's not going to be typical this year, is it? There are going to be a lot of changes. And for some of us, we're going to miss some things. I know I'm going to miss being with my mom and my family, my brother and his family on the holiday. How about you? Are there some things you're going to be missing this year? Sue and I saw a segment on TV last night that I thought would be a great way to introduce this message. It was a segment called On the Road with Steve Hartman. Maybe you're familiar with him. Steve wanted to talk about thankfulness on Thanksgiving, and so he has three kids, and he was asking them what they were thankful for, and they were struggling with coming up with something. So he went to a food pantry in Kingston, New York, and he interviewed some of the people that were coming through the line to get food. It was interesting to hear how they responded when they were asked, "What are you thankful for?" One lady said, "I'm thankful to be alive, breathing on my own." Another said, "I'm thankful for my arms and my legs that they work. I can walk." Another said, "I'm thankful that I'm not living on the streets. I have a roof over my head." But the one that caught his attention was a man named Gabriel. Gabriel said, and by the way, he was an older gentleman, late in his 60s or perhaps 70, and he said, "I am thankful to be alive. I'm going to have an amazing Thanksgiving by myself. I will sit on a park bench and think about all the great Thanksgivings I've had in my life and be thankful for them. One bad Thanksgiving out of 63 amazing Thanksgiving, that's pretty good odds." And then he said this, "Maybe we should be a little more thankful for what we do have than complaining constantly about what we don't have." And there's quite a message there, isn't there? Well, Steve's son Emmett, looked like he's 11 or 12-year-old, said this, "If these people just found something to be thankful for, seems like there's no way not to be." And so, hey, that'll give you some food for thought at this Thanksgiving. We do have a lot of things to be thankful for, don't we? This morning, though, I want to go a little further than that. I want to challenge you. I want to go a little beyond just being thankful, though we surely need to be. And I'll use a verse to base this message on. It's Proverbs 11, verses 25 and 26. Solomon writes, "Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered." And Jack Hyles, I think, summarized this verse well when he wrote this. "The greatest blessing in the whole world is being a blessing." Now you think about that for just a minute. He is saying, and the verse is saying, that we can be a blessing to other people. And if you think about that, this is something that all of us can do. It doesn't matter where we are this Thanksgiving holiday, we can be a blessing to someone. It doesn't matter who we're with or who we're not with. We can still be a blessing to someone. And this is what the verse is telling us. We can all be glad about it. The verse in Proverbs says that God wants us to be a blessing to others. By nature, we're all self-focused, aren't we? And I understand that. It takes a lot just taking care of ourselves. If I didn't have my wife, I probably couldn't make it. I'd forget and leave everything. So it takes a lot of our energy just doing what we have to do, taking care of the family, going to work, doing all those things we do every day. But we need to step back once in a while. We need to ask this question, just why am I here anyway? Can you ask that at Thanksgiving time? Listen to this quote I ran across. "God didn't add another day to your life because you needed it. He did it because someone out there needs you." That's the challenge I'm talking about, being a blessing to others. You know, Jesus, when he was asked, gave two great commands. You know them, don't you? First of all, he said we need to love God. But what was the second one? It's go and have a wonderful life. No, I don't think so. Jesus said the second great commandment was to love our neighbor as ourselves. So God has put us here for a reason, and that reason is to care about and to help others. And so in Proverbs, the verse is saying, when we are a blessing to others, we are blessed ourselves. Isn't this what Jesus said when he said it's more blessed to give than to receive? You know, when we give, it's really not some great sacrifice, is it? Sometimes that's the way we think about it. Oh, I'm making this great sacrifice. I have to do this for someone else. That's not true. Why? Because we find out we're the ones that are truly blessed. Haven't you experienced this? You've done something for someone else, and how did it make you feel? You felt great, didn't you? Now, for a few minutes, I want to demonstrate this from an Old Testament story. I want us to see how this truth plays out in life. Take your Bibles and turn to 2 Kings chapter 4. 2 Kings chapter 4, and we want to read verses 8 through 17. One day, Elisha went on to Shunem, where a wealthy woman lived, who urged him to eat some food. So whenever he passed that way, he would turn in there to eat food. And she said to her husband, Behold now, I know that this is a holy man of God who is continually passing our way. Let us make a small room on the roof with walls and put there for him a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, that whenever he comes to us, he can go in there. One day he came there, and he turned into the chamber and rested there. And he said to Gehazi, his servant, Call this Shunammite. When he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, Say now to her, See, you have taken all this trouble for us. What is to be done for you? Would you have a word spoken on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army? She answered, I dwell among my own people. And he said, What then is to be done for her? Gehazi answered, Well, she has no son, and her husband is old. He said, Call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the doorway. And he said, At this season, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son. And she said, No, my lord, O man of God, do not lie to your servant. But the woman conceived, and she bore a son about that time the following spring, as Elisha had said to her. So here we have this great story about Elisha the prophet and this woman that he encountered. Now I want you to notice three things from this story and see if it isn't true even for you and for me. First, we see that this woman was kind to Elisha. What did she do? Well, he comes to town, and perhaps she knew then that he was a prophet. But anyway, she offers him food, and I know he was grateful. But that wasn't enough. Soon, she provided food for him any time he came to town. But that still wasn't enough. She thought about it, and she said, This prophet, this man of God, really needs a place to lodge, to stay. And so she spoke to her husband and said, Let's build a room on the roof so that he'll have a place that he can rest when he's in our area. She wanted to help him, and so they did. They built this room and they furnished it with everything that he needed so he could be comfortable there in the room. You know, being kind to someone. Don't you think there is always some way that we can be kind or helpful to others? Just think about it. Haven't there been a lot of kindnesses that made your life easier? Boy, I have so many, I couldn't list them all. As I was thinking about this message, I went a long way back to my first year in college. And my first year, my freshman year, I attended a college in a small town in Ohio, and it was a little distance from our house. And so I boarded there at the school. We had an older couple in our congregation that lived in that little town. They drove a long way to church every Sunday. When they found out I was going there to school, they knew I'd be driving my car there. And what was I going to do in the winter? And so they said to me, "Hey, we have room in our garage. Why don't you just bring your car over and park it here? It'll be safe here. It'll be protected." And then, of course, a lot of times when I dropped off that car or when I went to get the car, why the lady, her name was Louise Leslie, and she would have all kinds of goodies to give me. Boy, they made a young college student's life a lot better. So there are a lot of little ways every day that we can be helping others. And sometimes it's in bigger ways. A couple of things come to my mind. I remember when Brandon Holmes died. You remember the high school student that died? And I remember all of you, how you came together. We had that big funeral service, and all the ladies prepared all that food for so many people, did all that work. You rallied to help out a family in time of grief. And look at the community. We set up a fund to collect funds for the family, for Jackie, and we collected over $15,000 to help her in that difficult time. There's people who stepped up in a time of need. And the second thing I thought about was when we had the tornado go through Washington. And look at so many of you gave so much time, so many hours, days, even weeks, helping people that were in great need. Those are the things that make our world a better place, isn't it? But it only works if we choose to reach out in kindness. And it doesn't matter whether it's big or whether it's small. We need them both. So let's step out in kindness. I want to mention something else here. We're involved in a lot of good missions, aren't we, around the world? Especially Nicaragua is the one that really has a place in our heart. But I want to tell you, especially this year, let's don't forget those that are around us. Let's don't forget the ones that are right here. And yes, Nicaragua still needs our help, and they're having a lot of problems of their own. But we need to be helping our neighbors and our friends and the people that we work with. We can be kind and help them this year at the holiday. Let's make this a little better holiday than maybe we have in the past. Something else to notice in this passage, Bible tells us that this was a wealthy woman. She could afford to do a lot for Elisha, couldn't she? And that made me think of a quote that I had read one time. This is a quote from Mark Batterson. He wrote this: "When God blesses you financially, don't raise your standard of living, raise your standard of giving." Hey, there's a challenge, isn't there? Sometimes we just purposefully need to think about how it is we can reach out and help somebody. And maybe we're going to have the Thanksgiving holiday, we're going to have the Christmas holiday. Really, we're going to have a lot of days. Some are going to be very difficult for people. What about you and your family? Could you do something to reach out to somebody who's alone or somebody who's really in need? Could you reach out and make this a special holiday for them? You know what I know, and we'll see this. You'll be glad that you did. So the first thing we see is that the woman was kind. Now I want you to notice something else. The woman asked for nothing in return. Elisha is so pleased. This woman has been so kind. He says, "What can I do for you? Would you like me to speak to the king? Why, I can talk to the commander of the army. What is it you would have me to do?" And she says, "Nothing." Says she didn't need anything. She was there. She had her family. All of her needs were well cared for. Let me ask you, can you do something without being paid? Uh, as I thought about this, when we moved to Michigan, I had to pull Susan's horse in a horse trailer. up there, and we pulled in the gas station to get gas, and I had thought maybe there was a problem with the alternator because it seemed like the battery was low. The light seemed even low. It was into the night. And we got there, filled up the gas tank, and sure enough, the car wouldn't start. And there was a fellow inside sitting in the service station. So I went to him and I said, "Could you do me a favor? My vehicle, the battery is low, and it it just won't start. I need a jump." And he looked at right back at me and said, "I can do it for $35." I was glad I could give him. I had $35 and I could pay him. We got the car jumped and we were on our way. But I thought, you know, wouldn't it have been so much nicer if he had said, "Sure, I'll just come out and help you. I'd be glad to jump your car for you." Just took him a minute. How about you? You have to be paid for everything that you do. I think of all the kind things that have been done for Sue and for me while we've been here in Woodford County, and too many to list. I couldn't remember them all if I tried, and all I can say is thank you because not once was I ever asked for a dime. It was just out of your kindness and your generosity. I also want to say this is something we need to teach to our children. They need to learn this lesson. My dad was such a great example to me and to my brothers. Oh, he was always doing something. I can remember our neighbors would go on vacation. Might be gone for a week or two. And the next thing I'd know, there would be Dad out with a lawnmower mowing their yard. They would come back like, "How did our yard get mowed?" But he was just that kind of man. And I remember on so many occasions, particularly in our church there would be an elderly couple and they might have needs, whatever it was. And he would take us boys along and we were always mowing grass or uh, trimming something. Maybe it was trimming the hedges or whatever it happened to be, working around their house. This happened frequently. He just was full of goodness that he shared with us. Well, shouldn't we be that way? Shouldn't we just do it out of the generosity and goodness of our hearts, never expecting anything in return? Our kids need to learn this lesson. Will you teach them? Will you teach them that the reward is in the doing? Teach them that. The third thing I want you to see in this story is that this woman received a great blessing. She didn't ask for anything, but yet she got something that was tremendous, something that was so great she couldn't even imagine it. He said she was older, and Elisha said, "You'll have a woman next year." Excuse me, a woman. "You'll have a child next year. You'll have a child next year." And Elisha said this, and the woman was in disbelief. How would she have a child? She said, "Don't lie to me." Even somebody like Elisha couldn't deliver on that, but he did. But he did. You know, sometimes your blessing will come from the individual that you help. And it does happen that way sometimes. And you know this because I've told it many times before, but in our lives, that great blessing was a fellow in Virginia when Sue and I were young and first preaching, and we didn't have nothing. And he lived down the road in Virginia there from where we were renting. And Sue was hoping maybe she could have a horse. And so we were riding by on our bicycles and we stopped this fellow's farm. He was a John Deere dealer and he had a big farm, lots of cattle, and we saw horses out there, lots of horses as well. And thought maybe he'd be willing to keep an extra horse. But anyways, we stopped by. He said, "You could really do me a favor." Well, what is that? Why, I've got so many horses and cattle, dealership. I don't have time to take care of all these things. If someone would just ride those horses once in a while. Of course, that was more than she ever dreamed of. But it became more of that because soon she was helping with those horses and she started training horses and she even broke some of the young horses for him. And he was very grateful. And she didn't know it. But when the time came for us to move away, he said, "Hey, you take this little colt with you." And of course, that's where Sonny came from, the horse she had for 38 years. I think 38. She'll tell me maybe it was 34. Uh, but all those years had played such an important part of our lives. And it was all because of Sue's goodness brought about the kind reward from this man in Virginia. Oh, what happy part of our story. So sometimes when you don't know, you do something. I remember hearing a story many years ago about a young man in a hotel, and he all he did was work in the hotel. He did the cleaning of the rooms and some of those things. And one time the owner of the hotel chain happened to be there and stayed in the room, and the young man came and waited on him every possible way, being so courteous and kind, making sure that he had everything. And you know what that man did, that corporate executive? He took him out of that hotel and put him in management there in the corporation, just because the young man had been so kind to him. So you don't know what reward might come your way. But the bigger blessing is from God, isn't it? God can bless us much more than anyone ever could on earth. And your kindness is what will bring those blessings from Him. Let me share something with you that I have found to be true. And this is talking about our finances. I think I can say this without hesitation, and I think Sue will back me up. Every time we have helped someone financially, our finances have gotten better. Now, I'm looking back and thinking over a lot of years. So I'll say that again. Every time we have helped someone, our finances have gotten better. So don't be stingy with what you have. Give to the Lord, and it will be returned to you many times over. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, we read beginning in verse 8, God is able to make every blessing of yours overflow for you, so that in every situation you will always have all you need for any good work. As it is written, He scatters everywhere and gives to the poor. His righteousness lasts forever. Now He who supplies seed to the farmer and bread to eat will also supply you with seed and multiply it and enlarge the harvest that results from your righteousness. Listen to this. In every way, you will grow richer and become even more generous. So he is saying that God blesses us and blesses us richly when we're kind to others. So we know if we show kindness to others, God will be kind to us. Well, let me finish up today talking about these 3 points. Reviewing: 1, we should always be kind and helpful to others. 2, we shouldn't expect anything in return. God will bless us. And finally, God will bless us for every kindness, and He will. Today as we're approaching the holiday, it'll be a good day. Let's make it a good day. Let's be thankful. And remember, there's going to be lots and lots of good holidays ahead. And so we'll celebrate them and they'll be even more special. God bless. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving.